Mayhem at Martinsville. Six drivers vying for two playoff spots. I don't think people understand how critical this race is at the end of the season. As an athlete, don't we sometimes want to understand that who overcomes adversity? Back against the wall, trying to win a race, trying to secure themselves as a champion. That's what Martinsville is made of. And let's get into the discussion and understand why Martinsville is a critical race for the elimination cutoff race.
Powered by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, and as you can see, we are live today here in Martinsville, Virginia. Beautiful skies, absolutely incredible. Guys, if you can't see it in the background, we're on a weird angle on the hill if you've never been to the track, so it's a little difficult to understand what's going on behind me, but behind me is the track, and essentially, 6 drivers will be vying for 2 playoff spots, and only 2 drivers will be coming out of Martinsville with a chance to go win a championship. Guys, we are so excited. We've been broadcasting this episode for a long time. We are live streaming here at Martinsville, Virginia. Bear with us because obviously we're on mobile hotspots where hopefully everything works out in our favor. But thanks for joining us today. If you have anything, feel free to, if you're watching us live on YouTube, jump in our chat. We want to hear from you, especially if you're tailgating. Come on by, see us. We have a koozie giveaway, everything going on. Welcome in. We have Martinsville up on board with all of you today. Today's episode, again, since we did record on Tuesday, we are going to be recording today, so it's a little bit shorter of an episode. Today's agenda, loaded show on tap. We are going to be discussing about our fan interaction zone. We have some discussion of J-Ski sponsorship updates. I want to get to our fans before today's race in Martinsville. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about Martinsville. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Craftsman Truck Series. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Xfinity Series. But then we're also going to be talking about what does this race mean for the Cup Series playoffs. Again, we already have 2 drivers locked in. We got Joey Logano. We have Tyler Reddick. But who are going to be the other 2 drivers joining those guys in Phoenix, Arizona in a week from now? I'm super excited. It is a sad time. I'm not going to lie. It's a sad time of the year. And the reason why is because I love this sport more than anybody. I love talking about really souped up cars, driving really fast. And we only have 2 weeks left of it. And I'm sorry, before we start today's episode, I'm sorry, you're going to hear a lot of background noise. We have helicopters going, we have cars coming in, we got fans partying. If you're not in Martinsville, you should be, because this is where the place is supposed to be. I love it. So sit back, relax. Let's talk Martinsville as we get you guys geared up for the Xfinity 500. Kicking things off like we usually do, some show announcements. Again, folks, we are live on YouTube now. Follow us at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. We are live streaming episodes on YouTube. Like today's episode, we would love to have you chat with us. Be more engaging with us. We love our fans. We love our followers. Follow us on Spotify, our OG source. Follow us on Amazon Music. And, of course, follow us on iHeartRadio. And finally, if you are a social media fiend, like myself, even though I admit I'm not, I love social media. Follow us on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, and follow us on TikTok at the Broken Wheel Bearing Pod. I know I hate that name is like that on TikTok, but unfortunately I had to make it sound pretty cool for the Gen Zers. Sorry, Gen Zers, I had to give you a slap. So, a couple show announcements again before we get you kicked off on today's episode here live at Martinsville. All right. Fan interaction zone this week. Well, folks, on Tuesday, that was the last time we discussed together, I asked the audience a Facebook question that we got amazing interactions with. We got amazing answers. So I'm excited to share your answers on air. Facebook question of the week from Tuesday's episode. Is Homestead, Miami NASCAR's best track? Again, we posted this Facebook page not just on Facebook, but we posted it in multiple NASCAR Facebook groups. So we wanted to engage even a deeper audience. Well, let's kick things off like we usually do. Our boy Trioval Life, big supporter of the podcast, Trioval Life, he checked in with us and said it is arguably simply because Homestead is the best track because it comes down to Homestead, Bristol, and Kansas. Don't at me if you are going to whine about Bristol because it is a half-mile version of Homestead. I love Trioval's answer, and when I look at Bristol, and I totally agree with him on what Homestead really is, or what Bristol is, and it's similar to Homestead Miami. High banks, high speeds. The only difference is the distance. Homestead's a 1.5, Bristol's a half miler. I'm excited to get down there for a show on the road. Would love to get there as soon as possible. Our good friend Neil, he checked in on Facebook and said the option tire at Bristol has made it interesting, but Kansas and Homestead are the two tracks that are great for the current Cup car. Again, we're getting a lot of Bristol answers. Bristol is a great track. Homestead, another great track for this generational car. Mark from Racing Paradise, he checked in on our live stream. And again, if you're listening to us on live stream on YouTube, on the live stream podcast, feel free to chat with us. Mark from Racing Paradise, he commented on the live show last week. He said Homestead should be the championship race weekend, and that should be the championship race. Totally agree with what Mark said. I think Homestead is starting to show you that it is should be the championship race. I love what it has become. And again, we saw that Homestead in 2025 will be raced in March. Now, with that being said, I think that they're gearing up for a possibility of them going into the 2026 championship race. I think that they want to renovate the track and make sure that every fan is heard and every fan is ready for an amazing championship race. So, Mark, I completely agree with you. Follow them on Racing Paradise on Facebook. Incredible podcast. Him and Jacob do a great job. Follow them. All right. So I told you guys we included this question in so many Facebook groups. And we're going to read some of these answers to some of our newer fans coming into the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast. First, Corey, he checked in with us about the Facebook question of the week through Race Fan Pit Central. Terry does a great job. Follow her on Facebook as well. Race Fan Central Pit Stop. Absolutely incredible page. Corey checked in through that app and he said, no, Homestead is not a good track. Now, our biggest supporters came from the NASCAR History Nextel to Now. So if you follow them on Facebook, your answer is probably going to be right on air. Let's dive into a couple of the answers from that page. Jacob Murray, he checked in. He said Homestead is a top 3 for sure. Chris Keith Dill, he said, in my opinion, Homestead is not even in the top 10 tracks. Dave Bonin, he said, nope, Martinsville is the best track, of course. And as you can see, we're here at Martinsville for a reason. Then we have Kevin Walker. He checked in on the Facebook page as well. He said, not the best, but one of the better ones. Completely agree with that on what Kevin said. Bill, he checked in on the Facebook page. He said, maybe they should have checked the spotter stand for bees before the race. That is hysterical. And that comment was one of my favorites. And I'm going to tell you why. As Lee Diffie, Jeff Burton, and Steve Letarte were talking in the booth, they come back from a commercial break. They start talking about all these bees in the stand. I'm so happy someone brought that up. Incredible answer. I had to share it with our fans. I had to. And then, of course, Jared checked in and he said, with this pile of shit car, it's Kansas, but Miami is a very close second. Dan closes out our fan interaction zone with a comment that says top 3 track for sure should be the championship race again. So I want to get to our last 2 answers in the fan interaction zone. Dan, he said top 3 should be the championship race again. Totally agree with you. What I think what made Homestead amazing and maybe what has lost its lure is that it's no longer the championship race, right? We always ran there once a year. It was a 1.5 miler. It was high speeds, high banks, beautiful allure. But then all of a sudden we got off the championship race weekend. And then we turned it into a playoff race. Well, we tried it in March, so we're going to try it again in March. NASCAR, if you are listening, we need Homestead back into the championship race weekend. I love Phoenix more than anybody. That's just because I have family ties to it. I'm sorry, folks. but I need more Homestead. Imagine imagine the storylines going into a racetrack like that, right? We already understand, like I said, we're down here in Martinsville. We understand the impact, the magnitude of a championship run. Imagine going to Homestead with the high speeds and the high banks for the championship race. Well, we've seen it before, and we needed something to change, which it did, and it became Phoenix. But I need Homestead back as a championship race again. The second comment I want to dive into is Jared. And again, like I said, Jared checked in and he said, with this pile of shit car, Kansas and Miami are the top two tracks. Listen, we talked about it on the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast when we raced at Kansas. We sat there and we said, should Kansas be a championship race weekend in the Cup Series? Unfortunately, weather permitting, it will never be. But with the way this new car has been programmed and designed, right? It does not do well in dirty air. It doesn't do well in certain types of aspects. I agree. Kansas and Homestead are probably the two best tracks. Now, today is going to be interesting at Martinsville. We have talked about it for multiple weeks. New tire compound, tire wear. We heard the drivers complain about it, and they said that NASCAR brought a new tire to the track. Now, will we see that in play? I don't know. We'll find out in a couple hours. But as of right now, before I see that new tire compound at Martinsville, yes, Kansas and Homestead right now are the two best tracks that NASCAR has with the car. It does, hands down. Thanks again for all the comments, likes, and conversation this past week on all the Facebook pages. This was a fun one. This was a fun question with all of you. Interesting to see where our fan base lines up with Homestead as a racetrack. Continue the dialogue with us here on the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. If you're listening to us on live stream, feel free to comment in our chats. Eventually in the show, we will be getting into a break where we'll read your chat your chat responses on air. Of course, we love the interactions, but those are our two main sources of interaction: is Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast and YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast on our live stream. So it's going to take our green and white checker flag out on stage one of today's episode. Excuse me. I continue saying tonight. As I'm staring at beautiful blue skies, leaves falling here in Martinsville, Virginia. Great tailgate, by the way. Great tailgate. So used to recording at night, so it's going to be an adjustment myself. So again, we'll take the green and white checker flag out on the fan interaction zone, and let's take the green flag out on fast headliners leading you into Martinsville. Wanted to get these out before today's race. Fast Headliners sponsorship updates, all courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on Facebook, X, or by web at www.jski.com. Update number one. Could there be a Days of Thunder sequel? Oh boy, this one got me excited. Tom Cruise is looking to make a sequel to another of his action classics, and it's not one that you expect. The actor is in talks right now with Paramount about a follow-up on his 1990 NASCAR racing film, Days of Thunder. So let me jump into this real quick, and then we'll rip off the headliners with all of you. Days of Thunder is absolutely one of the most beautiful romantic NASCAR movies of all time. Nicole Kidman, yes, you can get it. Absolutely in that film. Love it. Love it. But the film itself, right? The making of the film. Rick Hendrick and being in dialogue with Tom Cruise. Yes, I want to see a modern movie of Days of Thunder. And I think as NASCAR fans, this would be a good opportunity to showcase our beautiful sport to the people in the audience. I understand that some people get upset and they're like, well, we don't want the new crowd, the hip crowd, and all that type of stuff. Listen, unfortunately, Gen Z and all these younger people are coming up. Why not showcase an amazing analytical sport like NASCAR? And I think that this is the way to do it. Tom Cruise had an incredible opportunity with Top Gun Maverick. We all saw that, and we loved what it turned out to be. I think he'll do a great job in a sequel to Days of Thunder. So that's headliner number one. Headliner number two, if you're following this Kurt Busch update, um, Kurt Busch has pled guilty to a criminal charge of driving while impaired. That was according to TMZ Sports. Um, an Iredell County, North Carolina court official tells us the former NASCAR champion entered the plea on Wednesday. So this past Wednesday, 10:30. The officials say in exchange for the guilty plea, prosecutors agreed to drop the reckless driving and speeding charges he was facing in this case. The race car driver received a 60-day suspended jail sentence for 12 months. During that year-long time frame, the official said Bush will be on unsupervised probation. So I guess we kind of get an exit of the Kurt Busch DWI situation. Some thoughts on that. Real sad situation. I know Kurt Busch was a big, mentor coach to Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick at 23XI. I hate to see something like this. I really do, because I don't want to see it impact his career. I think Kurt Busch has made an amazing amount of steps and strides moving forward to be a better human being and trying to be a better mentor to a lot of these younger drivers. I hate to see something like this. Sponsorship update number 3, Michael McDowell making his 500th Cup start today at Martinsville. So absolutely incredible to see Michael McDowell's 500th start here at Martinsville. Sorry, let me move my head real quick so you can see the track. There it is, lower shoulder. There we go. Eric Jones, Scott Crowell, and Susan McKee are recognized as 2024 Comcast Community Champion of the Year finalists. Incredible news. I know Eric Jones and Scott Crowell are with Legacy Motor Club. I believe Susan McKee is as well. Good to see NASCAR. You know, we are a great sport. We have great people within the industry. Great to see us finally get some recognition in that aspect. Whitney Cummins is named honorary starter for the NASCAR Cup Series championship race. So like we told you last week, Michael Phelps is going to be involved. And now we got Whitney Cummins, who's going to be involved in the championship race. Whitney Cummins is a comedian, actor, writer, producer, director, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And she'll be the honorary starter for the NASCAR Cup Series championship race on Sunday, November 10th. Listen, I know NASCAR's evolving. I understand that NASCAR's changing to more of a hip kind of sport, but this is good. This is good for the eyes of the sport, right? We want younger people to get more involved with the sport, and why not do it by inviting some celebrities? So Whitney Cummins will be there, and Michael Phelps will be there as well. Update number 6, Wheeling will continue the sponsorship with Jesse Love in 2025 and Richard Childress Racing. You guys all know how high I am on Jesse Love. So good to see Wheeling is going to be back with sponsorship with Jesse Love in 2025. And finally, update number 7. This one was a little bit interesting. Lane Riggs will have shoulder surgery during the off season. So Cup Series Truck Series rookie Lane Riggs will be having shoulder surgery during the off season. So, all right. Again, those are all sponsorship updates, fast headliners as we head into your Martinsville race preview, all courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X, Facebook, or by web at www.jski.com. All right. Green and white checkered flag on the sponsorship updates. And now we are going to take the green flag for all of you and all the fans leading you into Martinsville. That's right. 2 races left. We have a massive elimination race here in Southern Virginia, in Ridgeway, Virginia, by the way. Let's get you up to date on what happened this weekend in the lower level series and what to expect going into our championship 8, or the final round, or the final race of the round of 8 going into the championship 4 race. So winner so far this weekend from Martinsville, we had Christian Eckes. He ended up winning the Zip Buy Now Pay Later 200 on Friday. And then we had Eric Almirola, who ended up winning the National Debt Relief 250. Let's kick things off with let's talk about both races, right? Both races ended with massive drama in both of them, okay? Kick things off with the Truck Series race. Friday night, we saw a restart with 5 laps to go. Taylor Gray ended up getting around Christian Eckes on fresher tires. Then Christian Eckes ended up bumping Taylor Gray out of the way. On the next lap, Eckes got the bumper to the back of Ben Rhodes. Before that even happened, let's talk about what happened. Ben Rhodes got around Christian Eckes with fresher tires. But then Christian Eckes had a good run, put the front of the car to the bumper of Ben Rhodes, got Ben Rhodes out of the way, took the lead, won the race at 1.19 seconds over second place, and ended up locking himself into the championship four. A lot of controversy with this, right? We talk so much of what we saw with Austin Dillon back in Richmond. Folks, this situation is totally, completely different than what we saw with Austin Dillon. The overreaction from NASCAR radio, Pete Pistone, and everyone in the garage was an absolute joke. Absolute joke. Our fan base is so much smarter than some journalists going out there and saying, well, this isn't racing and all that type of stuff. Our fan base loves what we saw on Friday night. Yes, they got booed. Christian Eckes got booed. Why wouldn't he? If you're not an Eckes fan, that's what happened. But to sit there, and I've seen journalists and I've seen people on the radio, excuse me, as a helicopter comes by, I've seen journalists and I've seen NASCAR people in the community that have credentials sit there and critique and criticize what Christian Eckes did. And I'm like, whoa, time out. What he did was no different than what Dale Earnhardt Sr. did to Terry Labonte at Bristol. What he did was no different than Denny Hamlin knocking Chase Elliott out of the way in 2017 at this place 7 years ago. No criticism for those drivers that did what they did. But now all of a sudden we have a truck driver because of what happened with Austin Dillon, which was a totally different circumstance. Christian Eckes' response at the end of the race, right? Because Eckes and Taylor Gray did have confrontation. Christian Eckes' response after the race was over was, first of all, he was hearing boos from the audience. The audience and the attendance was not happy. He was booing them, or they were booing him. Everyone's really not happy with me, Christian Eckes said, but I don't really care. I'm proud of everybody for working hard, and we're going to Phoenix. And that's the appropriate response. I understand that, I told you guys last week, our playoff system's perfect because it designs a system that mimics what professional sports in this country are. If you have talent, you have an opportunity to win a championship. We may criticize everybody that goes on the track on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. But let's call it as is. They're about 90 of the best drivers in the entire world. Sorry to shit talk you guys on the F1 side, but they are. NASCAR drivers are. What Christian Eckes' response was perfect. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And I think that sometimes we see like these drivers get crucified for what they do. But remember, their whole goal is to make sure that they win a championship for sponsors, for their team, for earnings, for money. And for the national media to sit there and crucify him for what he did to Taylor Gray and Ben Rhodes, which to me, again, this was kind of a joke. He put the bumper, he cleared both of them perfectly fine. And I know people are going to be like, well, Matt, you don't understand. Well, Austin Hill did the same thing and you were critical. Austin Hill intentionally wrecked somebody. That's the total difference. And if you go, well, Austin Hill didn't really intentionally wreck somebody, that's a lie. Because the spotter literally said, wreck him, wreck him, wreck him. What I saw on Friday night was completely acceptable and completely fine in a NASCAR race. And again, I love what Taylor Gray said because, again, his championship 4 hopes were on the line as well. Taylor Gray's response to the situation: I got sent to the fence when I raced him perfectly clean through turns 1 and 2. What goes around comes around. I have to race him all year long, and there could be actions that come from it. So, I mean, again, for years, we let the community, and what we loved about our sport the most is we let the drivers police themselves. We let drivers police themselves. If you won that way, well, guess what? You were going to get it back. I think of this race, right? In 2000, Jeremy Mayfield puts the bumper to Dale Earnhardt, knocks him all the way at Pocono. Jeremy Mayfield wins the race. Dale Earnhardt never forgets. How about Jimmy Spencer with Kurt Busch? For years, right? Kurt Busch knocked Jimmy Spencer all the way at Bristol in 2002 in the sprint race. And then what happens? Jimmy never forgets. Jimmy doesn't forget. And he didn't. He took him out in Indianapolis. That's the beautiful thing about our sport is that we have an opportunity to let drivers police themselves. Now, granted, was it as egregious as Austin Dillon? Absolutely not in any sense. But Christian Eckes knows that something's probably going to come in retaliation. Christian Eckes knows that, okay, we probably, we have an opportunity to go win a championship. But at the same time, he may pay the consequences maybe next week, maybe next year. Now, the one thing I will agree on the other side of the fence with the fans that are complaining that this sucks, I will say this. Last year's championship race in the Truck Series at Phoenix sucked. It was absolutely a shit show for the last hour and a half of the race because everyone wrecking. But the one thing I have to always remember is that maybe this Truck Series race, there won't be any retaliation. Now, I'm naive to say that. I am naive to say that. But we have to give these guys a chance. They are professionals at the end of the day. Do I think Taylor Gray is going to retaliate against Christian Eckes next week at Phoenix? Probably not. But in the Xfinity Series, sure. Because both of them come up. The last point from this, I saw Jeff Glick's tweet, and he said the playoff system largely does not reward how Taylor Gray races Christian Eckes. It rewards how Eckes raced, and Eckes said as much during the convo heard on TV. Unfortunately, because now Gray has no incentive to race cleanly in the future, nor does anyone who ended up watching this. Now, Chris Gabehart came back on a response and legitimately said this. Gabehart's response was, replace this playoff system with today's NASCAR and I'll buy the rest. A little hypocritical of you, Chris. When your driver in 2017 put the nose of his car in the bumper of Chase Elliott on the verge of Chase Elliott's first career win, and Denny Hamlin had no regrets and no retaliations whatsoever. You can sit there and say what you want. You can sit there and say, well, this is not today's NASCAR. We shouldn't be driving like that and all that type of stuff. But at the same time, let the drivers police themselves in a way that they feel. Chase Elliott got spun out here in Martinsville in 2017. Well, the following week at Phoenix, guess what he did? He knocked Denny Hamlin out of the championship contention. Is today's NASCAR bad? No. Today's NASCAR is full of drama. We had a sport for so many years that was like, well, let's see who goes out there and wins. This playoff system has now set up that every track is important. And my question to the audience that goes, well, Christian Eckes didn't win the right way and all that type of stuff. Are you guys mad that Christian Eckes ended up taking the guys, bumping them out of the way? Or are you guys just mad about the current playoff system? Because I think people are mad about the current playoff system, and anything that happens in this current playoff system, I think it comes back to, well, that move sucks. You shouldn't be doing that, and yada, yada, yada. That's my question of today's episode to our audience. Were you actually mad at Christian Eckes, or are you just mad at the playoff system? And that makes you mad at Christian Eckes? Because I think it's the latter, not the former. Final note coming from out of the Truck Series. Grant Enfinger, Christian Eckes, Corey Hyman, Ty Majeski. Those are your final four entering Phoenix, Arizona for the Truck Series Championship 4. So that will be on Friday night this week. I'm super excited to watch it. A late green flag. Ooh, NASCAR after dark. I love it. So, okay, let's jump into the Xfinity Series. Eric Almirola, he ended up winning the Xfinity Series race yesterday. That 20 car, man, is just so good. That 20 car is just so good throughout the Xfinity Series. I know they have multiple drivers and multiple Cup Series guys that come down, but incredible work by Eric Almirola again. But the one thing I will say, absolutely felt horrible for Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith had a legit fighting chance, man, and it was just so sad. He didn't get there. He was just unable to cut Almirola's lead. The closest he got was 0.3 tenths of a second. And then eventually, as I know that Rick Allen, Jeff Burton, Steve Letarte did a great job saying, well, he's almost there, he's almost there. And then it just kept fading. Eric Almirola, to me, guys, he did a fantastic job putting that car in positions that would not allow Sammy Smith to get to him. Even when it got close, Eric Almirola changed the lines. He made sure that Sammy Smith could only get to a certain distance, and then he took off. With Almirola winning and the playoff win, with Almirola winning, another non-playoff driver ended up winning a race. So your championship 4 now in the Xfinity Series is going to be Austin Hill, AJ Allmendinger, Justin Allgaier, and Cole Custer. Cole Custer and Allgaier ended up making it on points in both after yesterday's race in Martinsville. And Austin Hill won Homestead, AJ Allmendinger won Vegas. So those are your championship 4 in the Xfinity Series. But I will say this, one driver who was good all season that did not make it into the championship 4 was Chandler Smith. And I got to give my man Mark Schisler from Racing Paradise credit. I asked the Spotify poll question of the week. I said, which Xfinity driver will not make the championship 4? It was Cole Custer, Justin Allgaier, Chandler Smith. Mark said Chandler Smith. And at first I was like, no, he's in Joe Gibbs Racing Equipment. I know Junior Motorsports is so good, but Cole Custer's just really a point collector. Like, I can see Chandler Smith coming away with this win. And Chandler Smith fell just short. So Chandler Smith ends up falling short, but an interesting scenario took place on pit road at the end of this race. Massive confrontation between Cole Custer and Chandler Smith, folks. Smith ended up, he came down pit road. He confronted Cole Custer. Chandler Smith felt that he was not raced fairly by Cole Custer, and Cole Custer kept moving him out of the way early in the race. Now, Cole Custer's retaliation was that he felt that Chandler Smith did not race him cleanly at Kansas. So that's where this came from, right? You had Chandler Smith that didn't feel a certain way, and then Cole Custer felt like he didn't get raced at Kansas properly. Well, what it led to was a massive, I wouldn't even say a massive, it led to a fight on pit road. Chandler Smith, who was all fed up, ends up, I guess he tried to punch Cole Custer. It was not a punch, folks. Absolutely not. It was basically I think my wife hits harder than that. I mean, for real. Gordon, if you're listening to, I love you, but you definitely hit harder than what Chandler Smith did to Cole Custer. It was bad, man. It was a slap. And I love what Cole Custer said. He's like, he tried to punch me, or I guess he did punch me, but it didn't feel like a punch. Chandler Smith clearly heated. I feel bad for the kid because, he came out last week and basically said he does not know if he has a ride in 2025 with Joe Gibbs Racing. So feel bad for him. Just came up short on the championship hopes. But I'm going to tell you one thing now, Chandler Smith. What you did by slapping Cole Custer was totally embarrassing to everybody that watched that race, dude. If you're going to punch someone, square him up in the face and try to draw blood. You slapped him. You slapped him like my ex-girlfriend slapped me in the past. But anyways, Eric Almirola ended up winning. Like I said, your championship 4 at the Xfinity Series are going to be Austin Hill, AJ Allmendinger, Justin Allgaier, and Cole Custer. That race is on Saturday night on the CW. Really excited. That's a really fun championship 4, right? I told you last week, super critical of Austin Hill. He gets it done off of a restrictor play. He goes to Homestead. He gets an opportunity, or he wins at Homestead, gets an opportunity to go win a championship race at Phoenix, his first time in the championship four. AJ Allmendinger, we know how great he is on road courses. And now he gets an opportunity with colleague racing to go win that race. Allgaier's been there for years, 38 years old. The time for me is coming for AJ Allmendinger, or Justin Allgaier, excuse me. I feel like Allgaier might be the heavy favorite because of all the stages that he's won and all that type of stuff. And then I really, really like what Cole Custer could do as defending his championship run. So, that is our Xfinity Series discussion. Before we get into the Cup Series, I have a inbox chat. Let's take it out. Let's read it. Let's see what's going on our live stream chat. Trioval Life, he checks in. We know he was going to. Chandler Smith didn't respect Custer enough as a man to hit him like one, so he slapped him like a bitch. I love it. Trioval, you're listening to me. Like I just said, you Chandler Smith, you were totally embarrassing, bro. Like, you gotta square up and try to draw blood. And I was watching the race with my dad. I was down in North Carolina, spending some time with my family. And my dad and I were watching the race, and my dad even said he's lucky that Cole Custer didn't turn on him. There's a reason why that nickname Stone Cold, Stone Cold, right? Stone Cold Custer. So I love the comment from Trioval Life. I totally agree with you on that, brother. Chandler Smith, you got to respect yourself a little bit better than what you did. So, all right, let's get into our Cup Series, and I'm going to get you guys geared up for our Xfinity 500 discussion today and get you ready for the race. Like I said, we're live at Martinsville. Beautiful weather, great tailgates, great crowd here for the elimination race. So excited. Hopefully after the podcast, I get an opportunity to meet some of our fans in person. And again, if you're at the track right now, listening to us on live stream, come by Section D. We have some koozies to give away to our fans. Met some great guys this morning. Gave them some, so opportunities all over the place to meet us. That's why we like to do the show on the road. Did it at Daytona, had a great time. This might actually be my favorite one, right? Daytona, the magnitude of the race, but this one is just so exciting. And just listening to the fans talk, it's, there's nothing better than Martinsville in the fall. I think Trioval said that. And then real quick before we get in the Cup, Trioval Life, he just checked in. He said Allgaier is turning into the new Elliott Sadler, always in good equipment with good teams and the championship hunt, but can't win one. So I agree with that statement as well. Hopefully this year is different for Justin Allgaier. But as Lee Diffie always says, and the great Lee Diffie, folks, he will be down here in Virginia. I love what he is a broadcaster. Lee Diffie's famous catchphrase, let's go into our Cup Series discussion. Today, folks, mayhem at Martinsville. You guys have been hearing me now throughout this episode basically talk about it. We got 6 drivers vying for 2 playoff spots. 2 drivers are locked in. Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick. They won Vegas. They won Homestead respectively. Now, we have opportunities for a couple other drivers to fight with them at Phoenix for the championship 4. Christopher Bell, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott. Those are our drivers that are not locked in. But I think what makes this race probably the most exciting and why I bought tickets for this race specifically, all 8 of the final 8 drivers can win at any time. They're the most 8 talented drivers on the circuit. I know that Bowman ended up getting disqualified after the Roval, and Logano probably shouldn't be in there, and yada, yada, yada. I heard it all. But Joey Logano in the round of 8 and going into the championship 4 is always a threat no matter what. I told you guys, after Vegas, he straight up, 7 different teams punched air and threw their phones in the ocean. They were pissed. And what does he do? He ends up winning the race. Well, last week, right, we always talk about adversity. What makes sports great? Showing your grit, showing adversity. Tyler Reddick has absolutely had a horrendous playoff run. Won the regular season points championship. Terrible throughout all through the playoffs. Couldn't get out of his own way. One top 10. But what does he do? I told you guys. He pulled a Michael Jordan. He ends up going out there, scoring the game-winning shot, and locks himself into championship 4. But going back to what I said, why I bought tickets today. 6 drivers today enter the mayhem that's about ready to ensue in about 3 hours. And all of them could have won here in Martinsville. What started off? Christopher Bell, back against his wall in 2022. What does he do? Comes down here, ends up winning the race below the cut line, goes to the championship 4. William Byron ends up winning this race in 2022 and 2024 in the spring. Shorter race, a little bit different strategy, but William Byron got it done. Kyle Larson, terrible at Martinsville until he got into Hendrick Motorsports equipment. What does he do? He wins the 2023 sprint race. Again, different strategy because it's a 400 lapper instead of a 500 lapper. But I trust Cliff Daniels. I trust Rudy Fugle. They're very intelligent dudes. They can get the strategy done. They can get the strategy done correctly. Now let's talk about the other drivers. Denny Hamlin. He ended up, Denny Hamlin has won at this track in the spring of 2015, swept the 2010 races, and in the fall of 2019 or 2009, he won the race. Okay, so Denny Hamlin hasn't won this race in almost 10 years, or 9 years, excuse me. But Denny Hamlin's going to have the biggest obstacle. Denny Hamlin's going to have the biggest problem and probably the biggest issue because he now starts 37th after a throttle issue in practice yesterday and wrecking the car. But we've seen drivers come from the back of the pack in an elimination time and win the race. We have. Ryan Blaney won this race exactly a year ago, right? Remember, we talked about Blaney, he won Talladega. Just don't know how we feel. Is he a championship threat? Vegas, he's okay. Homestead, he's not the greatest. And then he goes to Martinsville last year in the playoffs. Goes to Vegas, finished top 10. Goes to Homestead, ends up finishing top 10. Surprised everybody, shocked the world. Then he comes to Martinsville. I'm sorry. I'm listening. I'm watching the live chat right now and try Oval Life. Great comment. Denny Hamlin hasn't won at Martinsville since Chase Elliott's debut Cup race in 2015. That's actually pretty accurate. Retaliation there, brother. But anyways, go back to Blaney. Ryan Blaney comes down here last year, back against the wall, and puts up a performance and wins this race. And finally, let's talk about Chase Elliott. You guys all know I love me some Chase Elliott. The greatest playoff run I think of my life was 2020. He was the first one to debut this below the cut line, back against the wall, the real mayhem, right? What is he going to do? Goes down in 2020, comes down here, completely dominates the end of the race, ends up winning the race, wins the championship. All these drivers that are, not locked in, the 6 drivers have an opportunity to go back behind me and go win this race and go flip whatever playoff disasters they've all had. They have an opportunity to go to Martinsville and shut everybody up and have a fighting chance to go win a championship. Qualifying results from yesterday for our remaining playoff drivers. So Truex ended up winning the poll, folks. The remaining playoff drivers, so the remaining 8 qualifying results. Chase Elliott, he's starting 2nd today. We got William Byron, he's starting 3rd. Kyle Larson starting 9th. Joey Logano starts 12th. Ryan Blaney starts 14th. Christopher Bell starts 16th. Tyler Reddick starts 31st, and Denny Hamlin starts 37th after a throttle issue on the track at practice, which ended up wrecking. The only driver I really have no concern about for me is Reddick starting 31st. This is not a Reddick track. Him winning last week really took the pressure off of him. He's got an opportunity to go fight a championship run at Phoenix next week after winning Homestead. I don't expect much from Reddick. I expect some strategy, but I don't expect much. Logano's going to be in the same boat, but Christopher Bell started 16th. That's going to be an interesting start. Ryan Blaney starting 14th is a very interesting start. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's a couple drivers I'm pretty excited to see where do they start and how they finish. Denny Hamlin's one of them. Denny Hamlin starting 37th. his pit stall is not good. It's going to be a very interesting strategy what him and Chris Gabehart are able to deliver. And now we've been advertised and broadcasted for months about how NASCAR's changing the tire compound in this race, all that good stuff. Okay, that's great. But I'm interested to see if this tire compound is going to help Denny Hamlin. Because if not, Denny Hamlin could be in a situation where he takes 2 tires, but the tires ended up taking him out of the race. But I'm excited to see where all these guys start. And with all of that being said, as I geared you up into the mayhem in Martinsville, let's get into the BWB pick. There is one pick today. One pick coming from Matt, and that is it. As I mentioned in this podcast, the last 45 minutes of this episode, every driver can come down here in Martinsville and win this race. We have seen it. I've talked about it. We have seen it in their careers. I am only giving one pick this week, as I just mentioned. I have mentioned that there is not a better story in sports other than a driver overcoming adversity when their back is against the wall. We have seen it twice this round with Logano at Vegas. We've seen it with Reddick at Homestead. And this week is not going to be an exception. I think a driver below the cut line is going to win this race. And that driver, you've heard me from the start of the season. You've absolutely heard me continue to talk about it every single week. That's right, folks. We are chasing redemption today. We are chasing redemption with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott is going to come down here. He's starting second. He's got the absolute perfect momentum going for him. I finally saw him and Alan Gustafson go for it in regards to strategy. They are out of conservative mode. They are aggressive. I've seen it once in 2020. I think that car is back into rhythm. Yes, it sucks that he doesn't have enough win. He's got one win. Whatever. Throw it all out. No stats, no data, no nothing are going to protect these drivers today. It comes down to the mayhem at Martinsville. And with all that being said, that's right. At the end of the day, the number 9 is going to come away with a grandfather clock here in Martinsville. They are going to do it. They are going to win. And the reason why is he's starting second in Hendrick Motorsports equipment, and they have speed. And the final point on that, as I said and as I mentioned, Alan Gustafson has finally said, screw the conservative mode. We're not winning that way. We have to win aggressive. At the end of today, I expect Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, and Chase Elliott to be your final 4. And with all that being said, folks, I hope I geared you up enough and hopefully got you excited for today's race at Martinsville. Folks, Xfinity 500 starts in about 3 hours. 3 hours from green flag. I'm so excited to be with you here in the stands. Couple of final points from our chat. Try over life. I saw you. I got a koozie for you. Don't worry. You're the first person I thought about with the koozies. But with all that being said, folks, enjoy your beautiful race weekend. If you are at Martinsville and you're listening to us, enjoy the beautiful weather. Go tailgate. Have fun with the friends, and fans down here. There is nothing more beautiful than a playoff race, an elimination race at Martinsville in the fall. So with all that being said, folks, we will talk with you Tuesday after we find out who our championship 4 is. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful day. We will talk next week. Goodbye.
Will you tell Mr. Dennett that Ricky Bobby is my best friend, and it's shaking big time.